Hey guys, this is George from Cox's Harley Davidson at Rock Hill, and I'm here in ZAKAR, California, at the RawHyde Adventures compound, zombie apocalypse compound. And if you've ever wondered what it's like to be on deployments, this is very similar. We've got a lot of bikes here though, and the name of the game is, of course, the Harley Pan America, which is why we're here. And we've got a nice line of them. I'm not sure which one is mine yet. We'll get to that later. We just got registered. Everybody's checked in, and we're just kind of getting a feel for the vibe here. And it's pretty cool. We got a zombie mural going on over there. And speaking of zombies, I wrote Uprising USA and Uprising UK. They're available on Amazon, so I'm familiar with the zombie genre here. And this place is a lot of fun. We've got a crow's nest up here with a 50 cal up there, you know, just in case the zombies show up. But it's probably not going to be a problem. Anyway, talk to you guys later. Brembo brakes with Bosch Generation 9 ABS, 1250 cc's liquid cooled, adaptive headlights, LED lights, LCD display, fully function, touchscreen, cruise control, heated grips, everything you want on a top tier flagship ADV bike. Really good suspension, really good brakes. This is an aftermarket bash plate that you can spec out on your bike. I recommend it highly. And overall, I think it's a great looking ADV bike compared to the others. Now, this exercise is going to be doing full braking with just the front brakes, which goes against everything that you learn from off-road riding.
Thank you.
That was Rob Glass there, the photographer.
And that drill was locking up the front wheel, or applying full braking with just the front. A little disconcerting.
And here we go again. We're going to do it one more time with the next coach.
A little more front brake even than that. You can actually stop the scene like a bike lane. Alright, so good job on the plank stop. Now just go down the driveway, park over there by the trees, take a break. Get something to drink.
The weather was really nice. I mean, it was, you know, in the 90s, not over 100 like it was.
Applying full front brake in the dirt is really disconcerting. But the bike handled it just fine. Absolutely wonderful machine. If you're thinking about getting the standard versus the special, guys,
And now we're going to do another drill where we're going between the cones that are now spaced out. So we have to do tighter angles on the turn. The training program was really stepping you through in a very progressive way, that all the skills built on prior skills learned. And if you had a problem learning one skill, the redundancy and the repeated nature of it really helped you. And if you tried to progress further without mastering that previous skill, you were going to run into some problems. Here, when nobody's looking, I'm going to open it up a little bit. Now, I'm doing over 60 on gravel, and very infirm kind of road surfaces. Lots of gravel, lots of sand, some hard pavement places, but the pavement, you know, getting really broken up. Just not good road surfaces. And you can hear that the engine has kind of a whine to it. It's a very different engine from anything previous that Harley has ever really put out. The bike gets compared mostly to the BMW, the R1250 GS, which is its direct competitor. They were constantly telling me to slow down. And while the GS definitely is the, you know, the target to aim at for any ADV bike, the behavior of the bike, the way it felt, and just the sheer competency, the confidence building, and the nature of the engine, the very linear delivery of power, really makes me, it reminds me more of the Tiger 1200. And I say that as a compliment because that's a triple engine versus BMW or the Pan Am's twin. Just a very good machine. Very good machine.
I do not like fluffy sand.
Well, we softened it up over here for you guys.
Now this exercise, which we did repeatedly for a reason. This exercise, we're going to drop down and then climb up a steep embankment. And the first time we go down, we are to do it with momentum, and then the next time we are to let it just tractor up on the next descent. But descending these hills, which are rather steep, and I promise you they were more steep in person than they look on camera, on video. But we're to descend using only front brake. And using front brake off-road is usually frowned upon. It's not a technique that you use because that's a really good way to wash out the front end. And also, you know, we're using the ABS. So this is the Bosch Generation 9 ABS running through Brembo brakes. So the brakes are really, really good. And the new generation of ABS is so good that, yes, you can use it on dirt. You can still turn it off at the rear wheel if you go into the off-road plus mode. And then you can lock up that rear tire and allow that to instigate a slide, skid, which is really good to help turning. And you want that off-road, but you know, using full brakes on the front is just like unheard of. And this exercise we took our time repeating that. And by going on a wide swing out, it allowed the whole class to kind of spread out in case somebody dumped it. And I just want to point out that everybody at some point would dump the bike. Everybody had a spill. I was the last guy in the class at the end of the course, at the end of the second day, to have a spill. But I wasn't the only one to have a spill that day. We had some spectacular ones. this course here was in places packed, tamped down, and then other places it was a little, the sand was a little fluffier. Now, one thing about the Pan Am, here we can see a biker go down. And the rule of thumb is if somebody goes down, honk the horn, give them a cheer, because everybody's going to experience that and everybody's going to have to pick up their bike. I helped a lot of people pick up their bikes. The weather was beautiful, and as I was saying before, it wasn't that hot. But what made it hot is the requirement to wear all your gear, which isn't a problem, but I was wearing the new Harley gear, which is excellent, by the way, and I'm going to talk about that more later. Very, very good, but it wasn't made for California Mojave desert heat and sun. It's great for fall. It'll be great for winter. It'll be great for the spring. Peak heat of the summer out in the desert. A little suboptimal, I'm going to say. I'm not harping on the gear. The gear, like I said, is absolutely excellent. Super protective, super useful, lots of great features. But I think it could use a little bit more venting, at least for California deserts. The previous class, the temperature got up to, over 100. They said that it was 108, which is just crazy heat. Now, the behavior of the Pan America, now we're in off-road mode, and the power delivery is super linear, super predictable. The different ride modes change the behavior of the bike in terms of engine mapping, throttle response, and your safety interventions. And it was very well thought out. I give it high marks across the board on that. I was looking for something I can fault on the bike. That's just the critical nature of me to, where's the weaknesses, what needs to be improved on. And in the tech aspect of it, it's absolutely spot on. The bike is said to have 150 horses, which is really and truly far too much power for pure off-roading. So in the off-road modes, the management of that power has to be tamed. So, you still want the power. You paid for the power. You want to use the power, but it's going to deliver that power in a very linear and progressive manner. So it's the bike just feels so competent, and I never ever felt like, gee, I wish this bike had more power. It's got tons. 94 foot-pounds of torque, which is ample torque. Coach is telling me to stop this drill now. I was having too much fun, because it really is fun. The other thing that you do, and you're not seeing it because I'm standing, is how you stand on a bike off-road. A little breeze picking up. So what you do is you let the bike lean, because that's how bikes turn, is bikes lean into the turn. And off-road, that is no different. However, what is different is your body position. So normally on a street bike, you're going to instigate the lean with some counter steering, and then you're going to use your body to kind of pull the bike down to balance the bike as you're applying G-forces to the machine. And on a street bike, that's great. If you're on pavement, if you got tons of traction, that's how you do it. On a dirt bike, you counterbalance and you lean opposite of the way the bike is, and it's very different. But counterbalancing the Pan Am is very easy. The bike is so stable. Now you can see the tops of the forks. There's some computer cables coming out of the tops of the forks, and those electronic leads, go into the computer. The Pan Am in the special here has adaptive suspension, so depending on what ride mode you're in and what the bike is actually doing, the rotational velocities at each wheel, your throttle position, your ride mode, and the bank angle of the bike. All of this is taken into account for your braking, for your suspension. So the suspension is really going to help you ride better. And to the rider, when you're using it, all of that technology is completely transparent. You don't think about it at all. You forget about it. The bike just feels like it has a really good suspension.
Service department line 7, service line 7.
Rock Glass is the man.
So we just did a big ascent, and we're not even done climbing. Quite the view.
So a few miles coming up, and lots of breaks to make sure the group is all together. Get a chance to drink some water. Now you can see that the bike is kind of shuddering a bit, and let me explain why that is, because I could have made it not shudder. So the surface of the road here is hard packed sand with spots of loose sand and some gravel, rocks. And because of the weather and the winds, it became very washboarded. And when you have the bike applying power uphill, because I'm pulling uphill, and I'm doing about 30 to 35. And when you go 30 to 35, it helps you kind of just cross over the sand and stuff. Keeps your gyroscopic effect going. Keeps the tires floating over the fluffy stuff. But the washboarding is kind of accentuated because of the traction control system. Because as the rear suspension is bouncing over the washboarded surface, the traction control is fighting to keep that wheel gripping the ground. And that would instigate kind of a shudder. And there's a button right there by my thumb that I did not hit, which would turn that traction control system off completely. You can turn that off, and then that shuddering would go completely away. Now, the result of that would be a smoother ride for me, but you can see in my rearview mirror there, I've got people behind me. And with the traction control, here, I let them pass. With the traction control off, what would happen was I would be kicking up a lot of roost. Lots more dust, rocks, sand, grit would be flying off that back tire. And I kind of wanted them to not get hit by that. And here I'm just enjoying the view. When I lived in Utah, when I lived in Utah, this was the terrain that I lived in the Uinta Mountains. It was very much like this. So I was just really enjoying the view more than I was paying attention to really what I was riding. Just absolutely lovely. And you can see I still didn't turn off the traction control. I could have at this point because there's nobody behind me, but decision was made. The engine is just so phenomenal. I absolutely love this engine. It's still an American V-twin. It's just different. And so instead of the traditional Harley V-twin long stroke, this has a shorter stroke, a wider piston and a shorter stroke versus the traditional smaller piston, longer stroke. So the engine behavior is completely different. The engine likes to rev. It revs high and it revs really quickly. And when you get onto pavement, you've got road mode, which is basically the default, and it behaves just like a really competent, good motorcycle. When you put it into sport mode, the bike turns into a sport bike. So your throttle response is really snappy. You have full access to all the engine's power right when you want it, and it revs so quickly. It's almost telepathic. It's just beautiful. But also in sport mode, your safety interventions are dropped down a lot. Your traction control is at the lowest setting. Your ABS, the intervention level on the ABS is low. It's actually very similar to the off-road mode, where it's going to allow the bike to have a little bit of fun before it steps in and says, all right, let's rein this in and keep control. So the mapping on that is actually really well thought out, and they did that by a lot of testing. They have been developing this bike so hard for the last 2 years because they wanted to make sure that it was right when it came out. And the bikes that we're riding here, these are actually prototypes. These are pre-production prototype bikes. The Pan America that we have on the showroom floor now, little tiny differences here and there that has been wrung out because during these ZAKAR experiences, Harley Davidson had a fellow there, I forget his name other than his first name, Josh, who was making sure all the bikes were kept in tip-top shape, changing the tires as needed, oil, checking the chain tension, doing all the maintenance stuff to keep the bikes going. And what he was also doing was sending lots of technical feedback to the motor company, things that might need to be tweaked or changed. So the bikes here really played a good part in the bikes that you will buy eventually.
What do you say?
Then we're going to go.
I heard we go. I got it.
The coaches all had a really good sense of humor because this was hard work. And I tell you guys, at this point, the muscles in my legs, my quads, were burning so bad that standing up and standing back up on the pegs was just a chore. You know, putting my feet down, throwing a leg back over the bike. I mean, it had become hard work. You know, because, you know, I'm a marketing guy. I have a comfortable chair in my office. I'm not used to this stuff. But it was great. And we can.
So we're just making sure Rob's last with it. Anybody want a drink?
And nobody was riding harder than Rob, because he'd ride up ahead, he'd fall back, get the second group.
I
and
could
ride
go
up
for
ahead
some
again.
shrimp cocktail.
There's Jason over there. And here we are at the end of the day. And we are just on the return trip coming back out of the mountain. Right now the bike is just in road mode, and you can see I'm not going very fast. Just taking a nice cruise. And I had not dumped my bike at all during the whole trip until just after the camera dies here, where I have a spill, unfortunately. Anyway, great bike, great trip. ZAKAR was a fantastic site. RawHyde Training Academy.